On a calm September day in 1966, Captain Peter Warner was steering his fishing boat near the uninhabited island of Atta. A seasoned sailor, Warner knew these waters well, and he never paid much mind to Atta, a deserted, rugged island where no one had lived for years. But on that day, something unusual caught his eye. A thin trail of smoke rising from a cliff's edge. His curiosity piqued. He veered closer, trying to understand why there was smoke on an island that had been abandoned for decades. As he approached, Warner spotted something remarkable on the beach. 6 figures, thin and sunburned, were wildly waving their arms. Their voices, hoarse but desperate, carried across the water. "We're from Tonga! We've been here for over a year!" He could hardly believe his ears. 6 young boys, lost and thought dead, stranded on this barren island for over a year. As Warner squinted to make out more details, the shock grew. The boys were clothed in ragged makeshift garments, and their faces bore the unmistakable signs of survival, hardened but hopeful. This sight filled him with a mixture of disbelief and awe. Could it really be them? Warner brought his boat as close as he dared and motioned for the boys to swim to him. With cheers and triumphant shouts, the boys plunged into the water and kicked their way toward the boat, one by one climbing aboard with exhausted, grateful smiles. They clasped Warner's hands, laughing and crying, too overwhelmed to believe that their ordeal might finally be over. The man who had just saved them was as stunned as they were, but he wasted no time in reaching out over his radio, contacting Tonga. The voice on the other end of the line was incredulous. The authorities in Nuku'alofa could hardly process what Warner was saying. "We've found them," he repeated, barely containing the emotion in his voice. "The boys, they're alive." For a moment, there was only stunned silence on the other end, and then a rush of excitement and questions. The families who had long mourned these boys would soon learn that their sons, who had vanished more than a year ago, had survived against all odds. As Warner and his crew headed back to Tonga, he listened as the boys recounted their extraordinary story of survival. They were from a Catholic boarding school in Tonga, 6 restless teenagers who had been chafing against the strict rules and endless routines. One night, they'd made a bold, reckless decision. They would steal a boat and sail to Fiji. Their minds had been filled with visions of freedom, adventure, and perhaps even a new life. Under cover of darkness, they slipped down to the harbor, found a local fisherman's small sailboat, and pushed off into the Pacific. But the ocean had other plans. Hours into their journey, a violent storm struck. Waves towered over the boat, pounding it relentlessly. The wind shredded their sails, and the rudder broke, leaving them at the mercy of the storm. With no way to steer, they drifted helplessly for days, the vastness of the ocean swallowing their dreams of adventure. They barely had any food or water, just a few coconuts and bananas, quickly depleted. In the heat of the Pacific sun, their tongues swelled from thirst. They caught fish with their bare hands and drank rainwater when it fell, every drop precious. 8 days passed in this torment, the boys slowly losing hope, when suddenly, they glimpsed the shadowy outline of land on the horizon. They rallied their last reserves of strength and paddled toward it, finally washing ashore on the rocky, uninhabited island of Atta. Exhausted but alive, the boys stumbled onto dry land, relieved to have escaped the perils of the sea. But they soon realized the new challenge before them. Atta was no safe haven. It was a lonely, desolate island with cliffs, dense forests, and no obvious resources. With no other choice, they decided to make the island their home, no matter how barren it seemed. Quickly, the boys established a strict system. They divided responsibilities to ensure survival and vowed to stick together, no matter what. Every morning, they would divide into pairs to tackle the essential tasks of finding food, water, and firewood. The boys learned to trap seabirds and catch fish, mastering the art of survival on this inhospitable land. With the sharpened bones and shells they found on the shore, they fashioned rudimentary tools. They created a shelter from branches, leaves, and palm fronds, a small haven where they could escape the elements and gather at night to share stories and sing songs to keep their spirits up. In the depths of the jungle, they stumbled upon a small freshwater spring trickling down from the cliffs. This discovery was a godsend, and they carefully rationed the precious water. To stay healthy, they even built a small garden where they planted seeds from any wild fruits they could find, nurturing a crop of bananas, taro, and beans. They slowly transformed their harsh environment into a place that could sustain them, no matter how modestly. Days on the island weren't just spent on survival. The boys became their own community, forming deep bonds that helped them withstand the relentless isolation. To keep their morale up, they created their own rituals and rules. If arguments flared up, they imposed timeouts on each other, a simple yet powerful way to prevent their unity from splintering. They designated one boy to keep the fire going, a fire that became their symbol of hope. As long as the fire burned, so did their spirits. But the dangers were ever present. One day, while trying to scale a cliff to gather seabird eggs, Stephen slipped and broke his leg. The boys were devastated. They knew that a broken leg in the wild could be a death sentence. But they refused to give up on him. Carefully, they crafted a splint from sticks and leaves, carrying him whenever he needed to be moved. They nursed him back to health with unflagging dedication, watching over him day and night until he could finally stand again. Their unity and resilience were tested, but with every hardship, their brotherhood only grew stronger. Time slipped by in a strange rhythm, the days blending into weeks and then months. The boys no longer knew what day or even what month it was. They lost track of time, accepting that this island was their life now. When the first year passed, they could hardly remember the world they'd left behind. Though they held on to the hope of rescue, it grew fainter with each passing day. And then, as if by some miracle, Warner's boat appeared. When he pulled them from the waters and listened to their story, he was astonished. The boys hadn't just survived, they had thrived. They had built a life on that harsh island, not through violence or division, but through unity, compassion, and ingenuity. Their story defied all expectations, a real-life inversion of the brutal, fictionalized tales of survival he had read. When the boys returned to Tonga, their arrival made waves across the island. Families who had mourned them rejoiced, welcoming them back as if from the dead. Reporters, friends, and strangers were captivated by their story. People gathered to hear how 6 boys, stranded on a desolate island, had created a peaceful, self-sustained society. For Peter Warner, meeting these boys was a life-changing moment. He offered them jobs on his fishing boat, providing them a way to pay off the debt for the stolen vessel. They accepted his offer with gratitude, and over time, Warner grew especially close to one of the boys, Mono. Their friendship blossomed, and Mono eventually became Warner's business partner and lifelong friend. The story of the Tongan castaways stands as a rare testament to the power of human connection. They had survived not because they were stronger or more skilled, but because they chose kindness over cruelty, patience over despair. Their story wasn't one of conflict and chaos, but of cooperation, hope, and resilience. Unlike the fictional boys of Lord of the Flies, who had succumbed to their darker instincts, these 6 boys had carved out a peaceful existence in the face of overwhelming odds. To this day, their tale inspires people around the world, reminding us that even in the harshest conditions, human decency can prevail. The boys of Ata showed that brotherhood, compassion, and unity are stronger than any force of nature, and that even the most desolate places can become a haven of hope when people come together. Thank you for watching this video. Hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more interesting videos.